They illegally sold 1,200 acres of my farmland on a Tuesday. I legally sold their homes on a Thursday. But let's not sprint to dessert. First, the appetizer. A letter that smelled like cucumber water and entitlement. I'm third generation on Black Willow Farm. Wheat, cattle, a creek that pretends to be a river when it rains, and a tractor older than some senators. On our eastern fence line sits Sycamore Vista, a subdivision with identical beige houses and an HOA run by a woman named Karen who had that "I run this place" look, which, on her, mostly looked like she was holding in a sneeze she thought was beneath her. The envelope arrived like a dare. Annexation notice and assessment. The font screamed legal. The grammar whispered Facebook. According to the letter, Sycamore Vista had expanded its boundaries to include the adjacent Greenbelt, formerly known as Your Farm, and, in a bold plot twist, had already auctioned recreational marketing rights to a developer for $1 to maximize community harmony. $1. My land was apparently worth exactly one vending machine soda to these people. I drove to the county recorder with the letter, my deed, and a look that said, "Someone is about to learn about property law in 4K. The clerk, bless her, pulled up a file like a magician producing a rabbit that's clearly a possum. There it was, a corrective plat filed by the HOA, renaming my parcels to Sycamore Vista Phase 4, Community Preserve, stamped by a notary whose seal looked like it had been microwaved. Tucked behind it, a quitclaim deed from a temporary custodian on behalf of unknown owner, aka me, apparently transferring any potential interest to the HOA, which then sold marketing rights to a developer for that majestic dollar. So apparently I sold my farm without meeting me? I asked. The clerk gave me the look you give a toddler holding scissors. We see creative filings sometimes. Creative. Sure. Like Picasso, if Picasso used crayons in crime. By the time I got back to the fence line, there were metal signs zip-tied to my T-posts. Future Community Preserve, Sycamore Vista HOA. A jogger with a golden retriever was already snapping selfies in my hay field. The retriever looked apologetic. The jogger did not. Enter Karen, stage left, with a clipboard and a stride like a metronome. "You're trespassing on HOA property," she announced, without looking up from her checklist. "That's adorable," I said. "This is my farm. Has been since before your subdivision figured out which end of a shovel goes in the ground." She gave me a smile that had passed away and been taxidermied. Per our expansion clause, the community's greenbelt now includes this tract. You can submit concerns through the resident portal. I'm not a resident. She clicked her pen like a tiny guillotine. Exactly. That night, I pulled every box from my late grandfather's office. Plats, titles, surveyor's notes, napkins with math on them. I called Maya, my neighbor and a land use attorney who keeps a copy of the state statutes on her nightstand like a thriller. I read bylaws until the words tried to unionize. The thing about HOAs is they're very brave on printer paper. Reality, however, is not printed by Kinko's. For sport, I went to their emergency board meeting. The clubhouse smelled like lemon wipes and coup d'etat. 9 people, all performance fleece and frowns, were nodding at Karen as she read minutes that sounded suspiciously like a fantasy novel. I waited until the part where she said, "Ratify annexation." "Quick question," I said, boots dusty, hat in hand. "Who here thinks they can annex a ranch by mislabeling it on a photocopy?" Security, a teenager named Tyler with acne and a badge that said volunteer, drifted toward me like a tumbleweed. Karen lifted her chin. "Public comment is at the end." "I'd comment now, but the county recorder beat me to it," I said. "Slander of title, fraudulent filing, trespass, conversion. That's 4 torts, and I'm just warming up." Karen tried an intimidation stare. I gave her an A for effort and an F for results. "Submit through the portal," she repeated, because parrots are comforting. I left with a copy of their CC and RS, because if someone hands you the enemy's playbook, you read it and doodle mustaches in the margins. 3 things leapt out. Firstly, they could levy special assessments in case of adverse litigation. Secondly, the HOA was the collection arm, but the liability lived with the homeowners. Thirdly, There was a fossilized relic called declarant rights, a bundle of powers originally reserved by the developer that, in theory, could still be transferred if you found the person who held them. Somewhere between page 47 and 48, a plan started to assemble itself like a combine harvester. Because if they wanted to turn my land into their playground on paper, I could turn their paper castle into a yard sale. Legally, methodically, publicly. First, though, I walked my boundary and restrung my hot wire. Trespassers like to learn with their shins. As I hammered a new post, I pictured Karen trying to explain to a judge how my mailbox threatened community harmony. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. The next morning, I filed a notice of non-consent, a demand to remove signs, and a quiet title action that would make their printer smoke. Then I made 2 more calls, one to Maya, and one to a trustee who handled a certain bankrupt developer's old files. The same developer who gave birth to Sycamore Vista and, rumor had it, forgot to properly bury his king, the declarant. Karen had started a game on a crooked table. I was about to level it, with a bulldozer made of statutes and sarcasm. The trustee's office looked like a mausoleum for file folders. He slid a banker's box across the table as if it might bite. Inside, the bones of Sycamore Vista, covenants, amendments, and a single, neglected sheet labeled assignment of declarant rights, unexecuted. Apparently, the developer had gone bankrupt mid-grand plan, leaving the king's scepter in a drawer with 3 paper clips and a peppermint. Maya read the clause twice, then once more for the sheer audacity. Sunset triggers after build-out or after 90% of lots conveyed, she said, tapping the line. Neither happened. The rights are undead. She smiled in that lawyer way that means someone else's day is going to get sporty. We buy them from the estate. Document. Record. Then we make popcorn. The trustee wanted a number. I offered $5 and a promise to send him a Christmas card. He countered at 100. I settled at 100 in a jar of my grandmother's peach preserves. Congratulations to capitalism. While the assignment simmered, Karen turned the petty faucet to fire hose. She taped an HOA violation to my mailbox for non-approved fencing color. My fence is barbed wire. Color, metal. She added a cease and desist for unauthorized livestock presence. The cows took it hard. A tow truck idled on the shoulder like a vulture eyeing my tractor until I pointed at the property line and the driver decided life was already complicated enough. Saturday, the HOA hosted a community fun run across my hay field. I turned on the pivot sprinklers. Look, I love fitness. I just prefer it with less trespassing and more squealing from people in neon tank tops. Evidence, always. I set trail cams and a drone, because if they wanted to play pretend on paper, I'd bring reality in 4K. Clips of HOA board members snipping my T-post zip ties became a neat folder labeled Exhibit A, Scissors Crime. Karen, to her credit, kept her hands clean, directing with that clipboard like an orchestra conductor who only knows one song. More Entitlement in C minor. On Tuesday, the clerk stamped the recorded assignment of declarant rights and slid it back to me. It was weirdly heavy for a single page. I carried it like a crown no one else could see. I sent the board a polite note. As the duly assigned declarant under Section 3.01 of the CC and RS, I am noticing a special meeting for Thursday at 6 p.m. agenda. Firstly, ratify cease trespass policy. Secondly, appoint declarant directors per Section 5.02. Thirdly, litigation reserve controls. Fourthly, public comment. Bring your inside voices. I CC'd every homeowner because sunshine is a disinfectant and also a spotlight. The replies came fast. From Karen, invalid. Only the board can call meetings. From me, see Section 5.02c. The declarant can call meetings, appoint directors, and wear an invisible cape. From a homeowner named Dave. Wait, are we being sued? From another. Why is my assessment $700 this quarter? Ah yes, the special assessment Karen's board had levied to fund their annexation defense. Per their own bylaws, if you fight dumb battles, the entire neighborhood gets to pay for your helmet. I didn't need to turn the HOA against Karen. She had already tightened the lid and put the pot on boil. Thursday, 6 p.m., the clubhouse again. Lemon wipes. Coup d'etat. Now with a side of murmurs. Karen sat at the head table, posture like a broom. The rest of the board flanked her, all matching water bottles and matching frowns. Tyler, the security volunteer, hovered, acne bravely doing crowd control. I took the floor with my invisible cape. Evening. Quick housekeeping. I'm the declarant now. A ripple of confusion. I held up the recorded assignment, the county stamp catching the light like a badge. Long story short, your developer left the keys in the ignition. I bought the keys. Karen laughed, a brittle, decorative sound. This is theater. Great, I said. We'll keep it entertaining. Maya, in lawyer mode, read the clauses out loud. Section numbers, dates, the magic words. Declarant retains the right to appoint up to 2 of 5 directors until build-out completion or 90% conveyance. My favorite line. Declarant may notice special meetings at its discretion. Watching Karen's smile fossilize in real time was nourishing. I appoint Maya Alvarez and Tom Henry as declarant directors, I said. Tom is a retired fire captain who knows how to read bylaws and people's nonsense with equal speed. The room broke into whispers. Someone clapped. Karen banged a gavel she'd clearly purchased for this exact noise. Out of order. Neat word, I said. Here's a better one, quorum. We have it. We move to agenda item 1, cease trespass policy. Simple. HOA signage comes off my property within 24 hours. No events on land you don't own. Violations will be referred to the sheriff. Passed 3-2. Karen wrote, invalid. In the margin, so hard her pen squeaked. Item 2. Litigation reserve controls. I introduced a motion. Freeze new spending. Retain independent counsel, not Karen's cousin, Brent, whose law firm's website features a gavel and an eagle and not much else, and publish a monthly ledger to homeowners. Passed 3-2. The murmurs turned into full sentences. Why did we? I thought. $70 for motivational muffins. Then came the spicy one. Refund special assessment if the annexation defense is withdrawn. I didn't push it. Not yet. The goal wasn't to win every skirmish. It was to let the crowd see the map. During public comment, a homeowner asked Karen why the HOA had recorded a quitclaim using unknown owner. She tried to talk around it and tripped over a sentence like it had stuck a foot out. The room noticed. She took a swig of iced tea, missed the coaster, and baptized her minutes. It wasn't a faceplant, but it was a wobble. I filed it under foreshadowing. As we adjourned, I handed Tyler a box of donuts. Security fuel, I said. He grinned like a Labrador and said, you're cooler than next door said. High praise from the generation that can turn a meme into policy. Outside, Karen intercepted me at the curb. You won't win, she hissed, which is exactly what people say right before they Google your name and find out you read statutes for fun. I'm not trying to win, I said. I'm trying to clean up. You spilled. On the drive home, the prairie sunset went full postcard. I rolled down the window and let the night air flatten the day's adrenaline. On my passenger seat, the assignment, the meeting minutes, and a stack of fresh liens I was not going to record. Yet. Karen thought the board was her army. She'd forgotten who pays the soldiers. Next step? Quiet title hearing, forensic notary report, and a little gift from the CC and RS. A clause about delinquent assessments that, in the right hands, is a lever big enough to move a subdivision. I didn't have to crush them. I just had to let gravity do its job. The quiet title hearing was set for a Wednesday morning, which felt appropriate. Wednesday is the day of the week where nothing good happens and no one's paying full attention. The perfect stage for a paperwork bloodbath. The HOA showed up with Karen in the lead, carrying a binder so thick it could stop a bullet. Behind her, Brent the cousin lawyer, wearing a suit 2 decades behind the times and hair gel that smelled like 1999. They looked smug until the judge asked one simple question. Why does this quitclaim deed list the grantor as unknown owner? Brent shuffled papers like maybe the right answer would appear if he mixed them fast enough. Karen jumped in, voice sharp as tinfoil. The community believed the farmland was abandoned. Abandoned. the judge repeated, glancing at me, while he is literally sitting right there. I raised my hand. Hi. Not abandoned. Present, breathing, and paying taxes since before Sycamore Vista figured out how to spell it. The courtroom snickered. The judge leaned back, one eyebrow doing push-ups. Counsel, this filing appears fraudulent. Fraudulent. Such a lovely word when it isn't pointed at you. Karen's face went pale, which on her looked less like shock and more like skim milk trying to cosplay confidence. She whispered something to Brent. He nodded, then said, "We withdraw the claim." I didn't gloat. Okay, I glowed internally. Outwardly, I just smiled like a man who knew the train was still rolling. The judge signed the order restoring my title clean and whole. Case closed, but the fun wasn't over. Because while I had my land back, Karen still had her HOA, and her HOA still had debt. A week later, homeowners opened envelopes that might as well have been ticking. Another special assessment /$1, $200 per house for ongoing legal contingencies. That's when my phone started ringing. Not because I'm their savior, because I was now their declarant, which made me the complaint hotline by default. Why are we paying for this? Is this even legal? Can I pay in pennies? I told them to attend the next meeting. They did. Half the subdivision showed up, and it looked less like a board meeting and more like a mutiny rehearsal. Karen tried to speak, but she was heckled before she hit sentence 2. "We are defending community interests," she began. I cut in. "By illegally selling land you didn't own?" Gasps. A neighbor named Sheila shouted. "You said it was already resolved." Another neighbor waved a copy of the court order like it was the 10 Commandments. Karen banged her gavel so hard the handle snapped. Symbolism, ladies and gentlemen. Maya stood, cool and calm. As declarant director, I moved to suspend all further annexation expenditures, refund the illegal assessments, and audit HOA finances for misappropriation. The vote, 4-1. Karen against. Of course. That was the moment the whispers started spreading. About Karen approving reimbursements to herself for administrative costs. About HOA funds spent on catered lunches labeled strategy sessions. About invoices from Brent's law firm that billed for emergency consultation at 3 a.m. The room shifted. Karen wasn't just wrong. She was expensive. And if there's one thing suburbanites hate more than crabgrass, it's overpaying. Now, here's the secret ingredient. The CC&RS had a delinquency clause. Any homeowner who didn't pay assessments could have a lien slapped on their house. And if the lien went unpaid, foreclosure was technically on the table. But here's the twist. Karen had levied an assessment that was now ruled improper, which meant every lien issued under it was, wait for it, invalid. And I, as declarant, had the authority to control collection actions. I drafted a resolution. All liens issued under the annexation assessment are rescinded. Affected homeowners may demand release within 30 days or sue the HOA for clouding title. I didn't have to push it. The homeowners practically carried it into law themselves. The fallout was delicious. Suddenly, Karen wasn't the queen of the HOA. She was the reason everyone's title insurer was on speed dial. Neighbors who once nodded at her in Pilates class now crossed the street to avoid her. At the mailbox cluster, I overheard someone mutter, "She's the reason I almost lost refinancing." Her kingdom was crumbling, one snicker at a time. Of course, Karen didn't retreat gracefully. She doubled down. Sent another letter, this one claiming my tractor operation violated community noise standards. I framed it on my wall, because comedy should be preserved. I responded with my own letter on official declarant letterhead, which I printed just for the occasion. To Sycamore Vista HOA. Tractor. Per Section 9.02 of the CC&RS, declarant activities are exempt from community noise standards. Please direct all further concerns to the Department of Get Over It. By the time the next meeting rolled around, she was cornered. The finances exposed, her legal filings humiliated, her neighbors sharpening pitchforks, figuratively. Though one guy did bring an actual rake for emphasis. And that's when I introduced the piece de resistance, the foreclosure clause. Not against homeowners, against the HOA itself. Because in our state, an HOA that racks up debts beyond its reserves can have its common property, the the clubhouse, the pool, the manicured entrance signs, sold off by the declarant to cover liabilities. And guess who controlled that trigger? Me. Karen had tried to annex my farm. I was about to annex her entire HOA, one property at a time. And I hadn't even pulled the lever yet. That was for the finale. The beauty of leverage is you don't have to swing it fast. You just lean on it, slowly, until the other side snaps. By this point, the HOA was a circus without the funnel cake. Half the board resigned. Homeowners were staging whisper revolutions in their driveways, and Karen was holding onto her gavel fragments like they were relics of a fallen empire. I showed up at the next meeting with a manila folder labeled, in Sharpie, Plan B. That's what you do when you want to make people nervous before you even open your mouth. Inside were 3 things. First of all, a copy of the declarant's foreclosure authority. Secondly, a list of HOA assets, clubhouse, pool, tennis courts, greenbelt parcels. Thirdly, an appraisal estimate that said, bluntly, total resale value, enough to buy another tractor and still have change for donuts. I slid it onto the table. Here's the situation, I said. You owe homeowners refunds. You don't have reserves. You can't levy another assessment without mutiny. That leaves foreclosure of common assets. And as declarant, I can initiate it. The silence was so thick you could butter it. Karen, pale but stubborn, tried to rally. You wouldn't dare. I leaned back, laced my hands behind my head. Karen, you illegally sold my farm for $1. Daring isn't the issue. Paperwork is. The homeowners erupted into side chatter. Someone muttered, sell the clubhouse. I never use it anyway. Another said, the pool heater's been broken for 2 years. Good riddance. I raised a finger. Now, I'm not here to punish. I'm here to clean up. So we have 2 choices. Either we liquidate assets responsibly, or we let a judge do it. And if a judge does it, well, I shrugged. Bidders don't always care about pickleball courts. Maya, ever the strategist, slid in next. The HOA could also dissolve entirely. Distribute assets. And mandatory dues. Everyone goes back to just owning their homes, free of Karen's binder. You could feel the crowd shifting. Dissolving the HOA wasn't just a threat, it was freedom. Karen slammed the table. This community needs order. I gave her a smile that could frost glass. Order is great. Tyranny with a clipboard? Not so much. 2 weeks later, I filed the foreclosure notice. Legally airtight, personally satisfying. The HOA had 30 days to cough up cash or lose property. They didn't. Auction day arrived on the courthouse steps. A couple of developers showed up, curious. A pool cleaning company sent a rep with sunglasses and a checkbook. And then, just to add spice, 3 of the HOA homeowners themselves pooled funds to bid, because they figured buying the clubhouse was cheaper than paying Karen's nonsense forever. I stood there, hat tipped, holding my bidder card like it was a winning poker hand. Karen arrived too, red-faced, muttering about community betrayal. She wore a blazer that tried to scream authority, but mostly whispered, clearance rack. The auctioneer rattled off numbers. The tennis courts went for peanuts. The pool? Snapped up by the pool cleaning company. Irony loves a good stage. The clubhouse? Bought by the 3 homeowners, who high-fived like they'd just sunk a beer pong shot. And then came the kicker. The greenbelt parcel, the HOA's pride and joy, their natural preserve. I bought it for $50. That's right. Karen's precious, annexed land fantasy had boomeranged back into my hands legally, stamped, and notarized, for the price of dinner at Applebee's. I waved the deed at her as she watched, jaw tight. Don't worry, Karen, I said loud enough for the crowd. I'll take real good care of this preserve. Maybe plant corn. The courthouse steps broke into laughter. Karen turned scarlet, then did what all defeated villains do. Stormed off with her binder clutched like a life raft. The homeowners celebrated. No more bloated assessments. No more petty violation slips. No more HOA dictatorship. Some of them actually threw an impromptu barbecue in the now privately owned clubhouse parking lot. Someone taped a sign over the HOA's old entrance monument. Welcome to Sycamore Vista, now with 100% less Karen. Meanwhile, I filed one last notice. Dissolution of the HOA. With no assets and no willpower to continue, it folded like a bad poker hand. Homeowners got their refunds, and Karen? She got a reputation that followed her around town like a bad smell. I kept the Greenbelt parcel, put up a new sign at the edge of my land. Private property, formerly known as Sycamore Vista Preserve. Trespassers will be educated. And for the final cherry on top, I sold the old tennis courts to a local farmer who turned them into a goat pen. Fitting, really. A place once meant for HOA drama, now full of creatures with more personality and less attitude. But here's the thing. I didn't even have to touch their homes yet. That lever, the foreclosure clause on individual houses, still sat in my desk drawer and used. I never pulled it because I didn't need to. Karen had already lost everything she thought she controlled. And in the end, I walked away with my farm intact, a few new acres, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply reading the fine print better than your enemy. You'd think Karen would have learned her lesson after losing the farm, the Greenbelt, the clubhouse, and her HOA throne. But no, Karen is the kind of person who, if she tripped into a mud puddle, would sue the rain. After the HOA dissolved, she tried reinventing herself as a community advocate. Translation: she printed business cards at Staples and started showing up at county planning meetings like she was still running the neighborhood. The problem? Her authority had the same weight as a soggy napkin. Still, she couldn't resist taking one last swing at me. Karen filed a personal complaint. Farmland operations incompatible with community harmony. Yes, she marched into court, solo, binder in hand, claiming my tractor, cows, and existence were an existential threat to suburban bliss. I showed up in boots, holding exactly one document, the quiet title judgment that had already shredded her annexation fantasy. The judge, same one from round one, bless him, read her complaint, looked at me, then looked back at her. Ms. Whitmore, he said slowly, you are aware this man's farm predates your subdivision by 70 years. Karen puffed up. Yes, but his activities disturb the aesthetic expectations of Sycamore Vista. The judge actually laughed. Not a chuckle, not a cough, an honest-to-God laugh that echoed across the courtroom like divine sarcasm. Ma'am, tractors don't fall under aesthetic jurisdiction. He banged the gavel once. Case dismissed. Karen tried to storm out, but tripped over her own binder strap. Papers scattered like confetti at a pity parade. I leaned down to help, then stopped myself, grinning. Careful, I said. Those are collector's items now. The courtroom audience snickered. Some even clapped. Word travels fast in small towns. After her courtroom pratfall, Karen's reputation collapsed faster than her gavel handle. Former allies avoided her in the grocery store. She showed up at the local coffee shop and sat alone, binder in her lap, while people quietly chose tables as far away as possible. Neighbors she once bossed around now crossed the street to avoid being within clipboard range. Her community advocate project fizzled. Turns out, when your legacy is illegally selling someone else's farm for $1, folks don't line up to take you seriously. The HOA homeowners she once ruled? Thriving. The three who bought the clubhouse turned it into a co-op gym with a beer tap. The pool was now open to the public, for $5 a head. And the goat pen on the old tennis courts became a minor tourist attraction, complete with a sign, Karen's Courts. And no rules, just goats. Me? I rebuilt my fence line with sturdier posts and hung a brand new sign at the boundary. Bright, shiny letters. Private property, no trespassing. This means you, Karen. I also finally bought that new tractor, funded partly by the damages the HOA had to cough up after my lawsuit. I named it Declarant, because nothing plows straighter than legal authority. Neighbors sometimes stop by, still laughing about the whole saga. You really sold their clubhouse out from under them? They ask. I just shrug. I didn't sell it. The law did. I just happened to hold the stapler. The last time I saw Karen, she was walking her yappy little dog past the edge of my field. She glanced at me, opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then thought better of it. Instead, she tripped over the dog leash and went down on one knee in the dirt. I tipped my hat. Careful, Karen. Gravity doesn't recognize HOA authority either. She glared, brushed herself off, and shuffled away. And that's how it ended. The woman who tried to sell my farm for $1, reduced to arguing with gravity. Sometimes revenge is loud, flashy, and explosive. But sometimes it's just watching your enemy dissolve into their own pettiness while you sit back, farm intact, tractor shiny, and neighbors laughing at the circus you didn't even have to pay admission for. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.